So I would like to introduce our third speaker this morning, Ian Campbell. Ian Campbell a une expérience longue au sein de l'industrie canadienne, en fait, et aussi sur le marché britannique, surtout. Ian started his career back in the late 70s and worked for Noranda, Norbord, what was before Norbord became Norbord, it was Noranda. So I know he sold a lot of Canadian lumber into the UK market in those early days. He then worked as a purchasing director for Hunter Timber, one of the major importer distributors in the UK. He worked with Russian lumber during a period and moved into wood frame construction with his own company called Echo Homes Manufacturing. So Ian has definitely a wide experience from both production and markets, and a lot about Canadian lumber. So he's going to talk to us this morning about the UK market for Canadian sized lumber. And Ian, I give you the word, and please go ahead, share your screen. It's going to be interesting to listen to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'll just put my PowerPoint onto the screen. Okay, just let's, okay. Everybody see that?
No, you need to share your screen, Ian.
Okay, just a second. Share the screen. Okay, here we go. Got that?
I wonder if you have pushed the button share on. I don't think so.
Okay.
Now that looks better.
Okay.
And now we need to find the present, and there's the presentation. Perfect. And
okay,
there you go. We're ready.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ian Campbell. I've been in the timber industry for well over 30 years, but I'm young at heart and still going. I'm one of the few people who knows the old era and the new disruptive era. So we're still going with Titan Timber, developing supplies from anywhere in the world to help our UK manufacturers and importers source timber. Canadian timber is in my blood. I started off doing my thesis at UBC in Vancouver, lived there for some time, come back to the UK and said, look, these guys have got a lot of timber out there, we need it. And those were the happy days when the Canadians were 33% of the market. So today, anyway, Sven's asked me to focus on the CLS market in the UK. You might wonder what this dog is doing here. Well, I'll tell you all about that at the end. Just for a bit of insight, his name is Buster. Okay, we in the UK, it may be a small island of 66 million people, but we are the largest single importer of softwood timber in the whole of Europe, importing around about 11 million cubic meters of annually softwood, 8 million cubic meters imports, and we've got a homegrown industry, British sawmilling industry, that produces, actually it's over 3 million cubic meters now, it's 3.5 million cubic meters, British homegrown timber. This is a timber supply chain of 10 billion pounds worth of activity going on with timber in our construction industries and everything else. In fact, it's consistently at this volume, and we've yet to figure out where it all goes. Different countries across Europe, and you can see the UK on the left-hand side there is the biggest importer against any other country in the whole of Europe. Of course, many of these other countries have their own forests as much as we do, and some of them have large forests, so don't import as much as we do. But you can see that's 2019 to 20 there. So we were importing softwood of around about 7 million cubic meters. I'm going to show you some graphs. We'll show you in the last year, 2021, it's gone up to 8 million cubic meters. But every country increased their imports in 2021 across the whole of Europe. Softwood timber is very much in demand for all sorts of reasons, which I'll go into in a minute. This is the recent import figures. I only just got these last week, and you can see there the 2021 figure of 11.7 million cubic meters of timber and panel products were imported in the UK over the course of 2021. Took a bit of a dive at the end of the year because this was really catch up, because the housing demand just took off in the last 12 months since COVID, and everybody's building houses like crazy, and timber frame housing is becoming more and more fashionable. And the demand for softwood timber was just enormous. It was running at over 1 million cubic meters a month, which is pretty much unheard of. I think the last time we had that sort of level was in 2009. Anyway, at the end of the year, we pretty much caught up with demands. The stocks were pretty high in the UK, and people started sort of easing down for the winter period, and it did drop right off, but it still hit this figure. At the moment, we're sort of like suffering from the shock of American prices. You can see on that right-hand graph, the US price index there compared to what's been going on in Europe for the last 10 years. We're fairly stable. The European countries, because of our Scandinavian, German productions, got fairly different sources of wood to access from. So the prices tend to do go up and down, but perhaps not as volatile as the US market. However, that said, since the post-COVID situation, and all countries seem to be working on their infrastructure expenditure and getting people back to work, building more and more houses, construction's going crazy. The UK has also found shortages of supply on timber and have been forced to have to consider much higher prices from Sweden, as a lot of the Swedish timber was going across to the States. Now, at the moment, we're around about sort of getting accepted to these sort of levels on the right-hand side. And we're also aware that the US seems to go up and down quite violently. But consistently, what happens in the European markets is we find a level and we tend to live with it for quite a long period of time. And I suspect that this level here, for reasons I'm going to show you on the next few slides, is that I don't think we finished seeing our uplift on prices. So I suspect that will go up another 5% prior to this summer, and we'd probably see further increases in the middle of the summer this year on timber prices, imported timber prices, because of reduced supplies from Russia and the European markets. This is what's happened since the Russian invasion, or the war, as they won't call it. You can see with all three of these countries, we now have no supplies coming in from. Belarus and Russia, obviously, that timber's been all sanctioned. Nothing's coming out of those countries. And you can see there was a fair amount of timber coming out of Russia, 492,000 cubic meters, 158 million pounds worth of timber. The sanctions on Russia and Belarus have been closed down, and the supply of logs and sawn timber to the UK, this is now regarded as conflict timber. So you can't get it PEFC authorized, you can't get it FSC authorized. There's a whole load of timber that's in the system that's basically at ports or on ships that's trying to get authorized to be used in our marketplace, but there will not be any coming in the near future. Ukraine is similar. It's all called conflict timber, not that there was much, £2 million worth. But one of our major problems is not so much the amount of timber that was coming from Russia directly to the UK, which is mostly joinery timber, high-grade whitewoods and redwoods for reprocessing into architrave and skirting boards and things like that. But it is the wood that was coming out of Russia going into the Baltics And the Baltics was one of our major suppliers of timber on carcassing, CLS, general construction type of timber. The Baltics will be short by an enormous amount of wood to support their reprocessing, kiln drying setups in Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia. So we're going to be down from the Baltic sources substantially, and we will lose out on the direct Russian sources. Scandinavian countries and Germany, they all import lots of Russian logs and sawn timber, generally for higher quality joinery, but they're all expecting to be see those volumes curtailed quite significantly. And also there are European forests. Since 2017, we've been clearing out Middle European forests of damaged wood or windblown wood or bug kill wood. This has pretty much been extracted now, and this year was the year they were going to reduce extractions by quite a large degree because the defective timber have been dealt with. And just as we've got the war going on, and most sawmills in Scandinavia and across Europe are now considering how they can manage their operations profitably on reduced fiber supply. So this is all going to impact on us in all of the European markets. The UK market is quite traditional, although we've got used to certain styles of disruption. But traditionally, it was always sawmills from Canada or Russia or Scandinavia who would be exporting via agents in the UK, and that would be sold to importers, the right-hand side of the graphic there. Now, lots of the sawmillers from these different countries have established stocking operations on UK port terminals, which was freed up from government control. They're now anybody can put their businesses on the side of the port, and they've established stocking operations in the UK. And basically, a lot of manufacturers and the large merchant chains, building chains, and the DIY groups have got used to buying on a just-in-time basis and spreading lorry loads per day throughout hundreds of stores. And this just-in-time process has been working quite well. However, it's expensive, but it does mean to say they don't have to keep large stocks in their own premises. However, that said, this might all change now, as just having large volumes of wood sitting at the terminals isn't going to be very easy to do if all sawmillers are going to have reduced fiber supply. So they're going to be wanting to ship just directly to end users. Now, I think on the left-hand side of that graphic, we've done some analysis as to where the CLS goes in the UK market. And even though we're importing over 8 million cubic meters of softwood timber into the UK, the market is about 10% of that for CLS. And the good news about that is, despite the fact that that's mostly coming from Sweden, the fact that they're using the word CLS is a great favour they've done to Canada, as obviously it stands for Canadian Lumber Standard. So, and it is the sizes you've used in North America. So this is an immediate market that is available, and we are going to be struggling for supply, that could be accessible to the Canadians. And I've been shipping Canadian timber out of the Eastern Canadian ports in tens of millions of cubic meters back in the 80s and 90s, and you are the closest point of contact, our next biggest global supply source. And since Brexit, we've been tasked by the British governments to find our way globally. No longer are we to be looking towards Europe as our major source of supply, and we need to open up our established old channels, our Commonwealth contacts, and see where we can find other connections to rebuild our relationships. So there's a 1 million cubic meter market waiting for Canadian timber if we can make it attractive to yourself. New build homes in the UK, around which the CLS, a lot of that CLS goes into. So if we just go back to the other thing, the manufacturing side of things is booming. The offsite MMC is 200 300,000 houses per year of total build, and the timber frame side of things, which is all CLS timber, is 25% of the new build housing market, and it's growing fast. UK governments, they've targeted the house builders to up their game. We need 300,000 new homes every year, and they are pouring grants into any projects that are off-site MMC, particularly in timber because of climate change issues. So we expect the market for manufactured timber frame using CLS to be 40% of 300,000 homes per annum starting this year, subject supply. And there's an average of 10 cubic meters timber in every timber frame house. Obviously, some of that is in joists and trusses, which are probably not CLS sizes. Everybody asks us, because a lot of the big importers haven't been over to Canada for some years now. They keep asking me questions about, well, what's the grade like? Is the timber good enough for us to have, and this and that? And I always say, you used to have it. We were 30% of the market at one stage, so it's not changed. It's exactly the same. It'll do the job you need it to do. However, because we've been rather spoiled by the Swedes and the Scandinavians and some of the Baltics, a lot of that wood does come over pretty much not defect free, but minimal pencil weighing, let's put it that way. But everything else is pretty much the same as your NLGA 2 and better. That's the sort of proportions on the sizes that the timber frame housing market needs, around about 60%, 50 by 150, or 2 by 6, and 30% 2 by 4, and a little bit of some of these other sizes. People ask me about the marking. Well, we were all CE marked, which is a conformity mark, a quality mark for the European market, which is no longer used in the UK, and we've set up our UKCA stamp equivalent. But basically, all of your NLGA and everything on your grading side could be easily met. That wouldn't be a problem.
Ian, just a comment from my side. Yeah, the stamps wouldn't be a problem through our grading agency, CFQ. We can obtain those stamps. Producers can obtain those stamps. Yeah.
Okay, good. Some pictures of the standard Swedish Scandinavian timber coming in at the moment. You can see the presentations pretty much as we've seen it come from Canada, with a wrap on it. There is an interesting situation that a lot of the Swedes tend to do, because some of our housing associations, the warranty providers, insist on the external 2 by 6 stud walls that the timber should be treated. And some of the Scandinavians do have what I call sort of light treatment processes on the dockside in the UK, and they do treat it with this yellow colour, which sort of gets around the idea of having it treated, but it's not truly treated to the core of the timber, but it probably protects it from it's like a moisture repellent on the outside of the timber. But whether it's necessary or not, it's just something to appease the warranty providers. These are the sort of stamps that you'll see in the UK. I don't think there's anything that couldn't be organised on a stamp in Canada there. The left-hand side is some Austrian timber, and the right-hand side is some Swedish timber. The main point is that you have to stamp it dry, and you have to grade it one way or the other. You'd be putting NLGA number 1 or number 2 or 2 and better on your timber. Again, here's some of the, a lot of the Scandinavian Swedish timber comes in through the east coast ports of Great Britain, mainly around Hull in the northeast area. So there's quite a lot of inland transportation going on, and nobody really comes in through the west coast ports, which was always where the Canadian ships used to come into. So there is sort of a big customer base on the west side of the country that would naturally prefer to be picking up or using their local port situations. did some analysis on the timber prices, but of course they have been a bit all over the place, and I think the North American markets have been surging ahead much faster than we can move. But in the light of the likely 1 million cubic meters of reduced imports from the Russian invasion and the Baltics losing out on their timber too, even though we were forecasting rising prices, you can see on the right-hand side the price list there. Our prices, the nominal, the red line is the free-on motor nominal price that we would be selling at in the UK to the major importers. Of course, merchants would be a little bit more. They pay a little bit more because they'd be smaller volumes and want more credit. Perhaps the manufacturing would be a little bit more again because they want mixed lorry loads and still they want credit. So, this is the baseline price for bulk orders where it would be several lorry loads at a time. I mean, one of the big importers buys 7,000 cubic meters of CLS a month, spread between 100 branches. So it's a distribution situation that they want. But you can see there that the dark yellow line, I've now started focusing on that line for the summer prices, and you can go across and see what the US and the Canadian MDF nominal price would be, which looks to me as if it might be interesting for sales if the US market comes off the top. If you were to come to the UK, the one thing is that the UK importers and the merchants like to look for is long-term relationships. In regard to two-way loyalty, they'll give regular long-term forward commitments on a monthly basis as to what their needs would be. They would honour their commitments on an annual basis if you could agree volumes with them. And they'd like to think that you were going to be ongoing, up and down to a degree, depending on world global pricing. They understand that. But what they've had for many years, and we had it with the Canadians in the 80s and 90s, but for 20 odd years, they just depended on us. And through plant health issues and various other markets being better paying, unfortunately, we lost our way with Canada and had to move across to the Scandinavians. And they have looked after the market well, and they'll continue to look after it. But I suspect that they'll have home demand that they won't be able to cope with in Sweden, Finland, Norway. Even in Europe, the home demand will be high. Everybody's trying to boost infrastructure projects, boost building to get people back to work, because construction is a great intensive labor situation. So all of the pressure on the available wood will just grow and grow, especially now with the invasion that's going on in Ukraine. So prices are only going to rise. I can't see that there's any other alternative. The supply will be limited. A lot of these large importers and merchant groups can't have empty shelves. They have to buy the wood in. And now they're asking the question, well, where can I get it from? We're getting regular calls now asking, do we have contacts in Canada? How does it happen? What is the price? So there's an inquiry. We're in the inquiry stage as people look around, and they're dealing with Brexit, and now they're dealing with the invasion in Ukraine. So there is an opportunity coming. I think the prices will move up quite strongly. I think they will stay up for quite some time. All European governments are insisting, because of climate issues and sustainable manufacturing, on construction. Offsite MMC is ready to surge. I think we'll see timber being specified in as many projects as it can be. It's sort of a government command that we use timber wherever possible. So you've probably heard it all before. It's all happening in North America, I'm sure. But the Europeans have also got these problems, and perhaps more so ourselves, because we've extricated ourselves from Europe. Not totally, obviously they're close neighbours, but as a trading bloc, we've been tasked with having to look more globally to try and develop long-term relationships. These are the sort of things that you need to do to build up and identity and longer-term relationship implications, talk about long-term strategies, you know, particularly start small.
Ian, 2 minutes to get some time for questions.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then there are opportunities for added value, treated timber at source or even in the UK. Establish a UK structure to handle your sales and marketing so people can access you quickly. There's the two brave flags suggesting that there could be a good bond between our countries. There already is a warm feeling to Canada. We want to do business with Canada, and people like to travel to your part of the world as much as I think Canada likes to come here. So lead the pack, make your mark. Hungry for timber, that's what the dog says. And I'll leave you with the name of the dog. It's called Buster. So there you go. Thanks for listening. If you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And Sven has a more detailed report on CLS if you want to dig into it in your own time. Thank you very much for listening.
Perfect, Ian. Yeah, that's true. Ian has done a more detailed report, which I have shared already, but is still available, of course, if you need it again. And I should also say that we're actually discussing to do a mission to the UK to visit importers and buyers and see what's the chances for us. So let's see here. I think in the chat we have a couple of questions. Where should I start? We have one here from Benoit Martin. What about lengths? Will North American lengths be easily accepted, knowing that Scandinavian are making metric 2.4 exactly and 6.0? So how about our 8 feet, our 16 feet, which is not exactly 2.4 or 4.8?
Well, the answer to that is they would accept your 8 foot and 16 foot, but priced as a 2.4 and a 4.8. So it's basically that you take up the difference or the loss in the measure in the price. However, obviously, if you could do the exact 2.4 and the 4.8, that would be a bonus. But in the past, we have had that issue. I know we shipped a lot of wood probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and it was all 8 foot and 16 foot, but charged as 2.4 and 4.8. So there wouldn't be a problem on the length.
Okay, don't be shy. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, that's fine. I have another one here from Alain, who, first of all, I put the question to you, Ian, the second one here. What other entry procedures are required other than the stamp to send wall panels, floor truss, roof truss to the UK? Quebec prefab producers need to be certified somehow by local UK engineers. Actually, maybe we'll wait with this question until the second presentation Ian is doing this afternoon. Ian, you could maybe stop your share of the screen now. I see myself in double.
Okay.
So let's take the other question here, also from Alain. Sven, you said QFIC can stamp for the UK with the UKCA stamp. Is this procedure easy to do for a wall panel roof truss? Okay, it's all once again, it's more on the wall panel roof truss side. But to talk about the stamp, so far the UK is still accepting the CE mark, which is easy to obtain. And I know that CLSAB are currently making sure that once the UKCA new stamp will be required, we will be easily, it will be available to Canadian producers as well. So, any other questions? talking about the quantities you had, Ian, so a million cubic meters in terms of board foot, that's about 600 million board foot market for CLS in the UK.
And it'll be heavy to 2.6, and second biggest size is 2x4.
Yeah, 2x6 and 2x4. Let's see here. Okay. Canada, another question from David Surprenant. Canada is negotiating a permanent free trade agreement with the UK right now. How can Quebec, Canada industry maximize that potential of the free trade agreement with the UK in the long term? I understand that there are not a lot of normative constraints to overcome in the UK for Canadian lumber.
I don't think there's any problem with Canadian timber coming here at all. As long as we've got the Phytosanitary certificate information and we've got PEFC or FSC, that's all we're worried about. In fact, if anything, I'd have thought Canadian timber was one of the easiest things to get sorted in any free trade agreement. So I haven't heard of any issues as to regards that you have to do anything special.
Okay, there's another question from Nicolas Rompré. Are there any phytosanitary norms, rules on wood when imported? You mentioned treatment. What kind of treatments are required?
Well, the only phytosanitary certificates that we need are the standard ones that we've always had. Basically saying it's been kiln dried at 56 degrees for the minimum of 30 minutes. So that's pretty much standard, I think, as far as I know, for your timber on export. But as regards any, when I talked about the treatment, that was more to do with treatment of the 2x6 in the external stud walls for timber frame housing. A lot of the warranty providers insist on it, but most of the time it's done at arrival in the UK at the port facilities, or it may even be done by the importers at their own premises. Not many shippers are, the only place that it gets treated is from the Baltics. The Baltics do have treatment plants at their ports of exit, and they do treat it prior to delivery, but that's just general carcassing more than CLS. So it can be handled at arrival in the UK anyway. So if you can treat it for export and you can do it in Canada, that's another unique selling point because not many other people would do that.
Very good. I don't see any other questions, and our time is basically out. So once again, Ian, thank you very much for the presentation. And Ian is going to be back.
Yep.